Well, good morning if you are in Kansas or Missouri or somewhere in the middle of the United States. Good afternoon if you are in New York City, where I am. Good evening if you are in Budapest, for example, or anywhere in the world where I have listeners to Fred Plotkin on Fridays on Adagio, the place where classical music happens. As you know, Adagio is a video and audio streaming platform dedicated to supporting artists and to making classical music and opera available to fans all around the world. Today is May 9th of 2025. I'm not going to pretend tomorrow's my birthday. So for my birthday, I decided, what gift do I want for my birthday that perhaps I could share as a gift to people around the world? And that answer came very quickly. It's Joyce Donato, who joins me from Budapest. Beloved artist, I can say that, and not just by me. An artist who is singular in her career, in her approach, in, I think, what she brings to audiences, and I think also what audiences bring to her. And we met, I think, about 20 years ago. And while we don't see each other that often, we turn up in all the good places. I go to your master classes when you do them in New York. And obviously, I go to all of your performances at the Met, and I've seen you elsewhere. And Joyce, you're in Budapest. Welcome.
Thank you, Fred, and happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
Wow, I feel very honored and very happy to be here to help you celebrate and
Thank
celebrate
you.
what is 5 years of Fridays with Fred.
5 years of Fred Plotkin on Fridays.
Yeah.
So many people know Joyce Donato for her wonderful music making, and I I'm going to acknowledge that. And rather than talk about the music making, I want to talk about your choices about your music, and then your choices in other aspects of your career. Um, I've seen you, as I said, mostly at the Metropolitan Opera, and I did a bit of a calculation. You began in 2005, so we're talking 20 years of performances at the Met. And did you know that? Yeah.
I
And
I rarely look back into, but yeah, that's 20 years.
yeah, and
Okay.
I think we met in 2009, if I remember. And the calculation I did, though, that's so interesting to me, because I can't think of another artist in the history of the Met, perhaps, maybe Enrico Caruso, not Placido Domingo, perhaps, but I don't think so, who has done not only so many, Domingo did a lot of new productions, but so many new roles that were new to the Met. And so if I can, am I leaving someone out? I
No,
have
no, no.
Isolier in Le Conterie. I have Sycorax in the Enchanted Island. And by the way, next week my guest is Fela McDermott, who directed that.
Oh, no.
Um, I have Elena in La Donna del Lago by Rossini. I have Agrippina by Handel. I have, read my little writing, Virginia Woolf in The Hours by Kevin Putz. Um, Sister Helen Prejean in Jake Hagee's wonderful Dead Man Walking. These are not necessarily world premiere operas, though some of them were, but these were works new to the Metropolitan Opera. You did
Cendrillon,
Cendrillon was new to the Met. Maybe I read it wrong. I have it as a new production.
but it was
Um,
also a Met premiere. The Met hadn't done it.
was it okay? I believe you. And you, among the others, were Stefano and Romeo and Juliet was a new production. Maria Stuarda was a new production, fabulous, by the way, all fabulous. Um, and a new production opening night of Adalgisa, Norma, Sandra Radvanovsky, Joseph Kalea, were
Yeah.
your co-stars. And next year, you're doing another new production, an opera new to the Met, not new to the world. I think it premiered in France. It was in San Francisco, and I think Dresden or Amsterdam, I forget where, in Helsinki, Innocence by the late Kaya Sariaho.
Hmm.
And so I guess my question is, do you seek the new when you do things at the Met and elsewhere, or do you seek things that compel you that just happen to be new?
I seek things that I think I can hit out of the park.
Okay.
Um,
International listeners, that's a baseball expression. That means hitting a home run. In other words, scoring a run, a goal.
that's right. That's a home run. I
Yeah.
do. That's how I've tried to really choose repertoire and recital repertoire is if I can list you, five other singers that I think I'd rather listen to or have more to say, I'll let them do it. But if I think like there's a role that I have something really particular that can make it be heard anew, or I could find something um a different perspective to it than most people are used to, or a piece that I really want people to know or to
Mhm.
discover. I love that. I love that. And so that's what I search out. I've never just wanted to just continue, I sing Carabino, I'll sing it everywhere. It's never been my style. I think Rosina, Cenerentola are the roles that I sang the most. But as my career started rolling, if I was taking on a new role, like Elena and Donna del Lago, I wanted to do it 6 or 7 times and then move on to the next thing.
Mhm.
I never wanted to stay in the same role over and over and over. But I wanted a crack at it several times before just moving on to the next.
You at the Met and elsewhere have sung La Cenerentola and Cendrillon, the Cinderella stories. And I think it's very possible for people to dismiss those stories as little girl in the ashes who meets a prince and the shoe fits or the ring fits or the bracelet fits, whatever they have in the opera. Um, and it ends happily ever after. I happen to think that Cendrillon and especially La Cenerentola are about a whole lot more. And when I've seen it done by you and also other artists, um, I don't want to use the word affirmation of women and so on because that's too global for something. But it is about, I believe, a person who discovers herself. And then rather than seek vengeance against the stepsisters, the stepmother, and so on, non più mesta, I'm no longer sad. She shares the love. And it's such an exciting ending for me, a lot more than some of the other Rossini comedies, though I love
Hmm.
them. Um, because it's it's about tolerance, it's about understanding and
Forgiveness.
forgiveness. Okay. And the way you played them and the way many years ago I saw Frederica von Schade play them, it had a whole other flavor than a fairy tale. It was about now I get it.
I, you know, I I love that that's your perspective of it. With Cenerentola, the first thing she talks about is innocence and a kind of purity. And when you said she discovers who she is, I actually think from the very beginning, she knows exactly who she is. And she does not have an easy life. And she, maybe dreams of well, she does. She dreams of being surrounded by the people that she loves. And she loves her sister. She loves her stepfather. Otherwise, she wouldn't embrace them at the end, say, come. But she also dreams for something for herself
Yeah.
and never, ever abandoning that sense of goodness.
Mhm.
However, like in the Act One finale, I love this. When she has the time to take the stage of her own life, she does it in an extraordinary way. She doesn't back down like a mouse, and she's not completely submissive and quiet, even though she's a very docile, gentle spirit. She's also strong, and that strength comes from her love. That
Mhm.
strength comes from her goodness. And so at the very end, I'm 100% with you. When she sings Non più mesta, and I always love if I'm working with a young singer, it starts Non più mesta canto. It's a beautiful melody, but I always kind of feel like, is somebody going to stop me? Can I keep going? Like, because everybody's like, shut up, Cenerentola. and nobody stops her. And
Yeah.
so as she just, accelerates and gets going with it, it is a total celebration of her goodness. And it's not flamboyant to be flamboyant, and it's not a diva move like now I'm center stage. This is what I was talking about from the beginning. And she
Mhm.
opens her arms to everybody, even those that wronged her, and she brings them close to her. And it's true celebration. And it is, you can call it naive, but I'll tell you, in 2025, I call it freaking heroic. And
Yeah.
I call it like true example of goodness triumphing. Triumphing.
Yeah.
Is that right? Triumphante. Yeah, triumphing over the darkness.
Yeah.
So it's anything but naive. Yeah.
Unless there's another Met role that you'd like to talk about, because I could talk to you about your roles all afternoon, but I would rather talk to you about other things. Um, I want to just talk to you about one role that I've not seen you do that is arguably my favorite opera, one of my favorite operas. I mentioned to you a number of years ago that I thought you'd be perfect in the role, and I know that you are, and I've not seen it, or I've heard a recording of Didon in Berlioz's Le Troyen. And I just have always felt that each 10 years of Hector Berlioz, they used to celebrate him every 10 years. In the year three, he was born in 1803. Um, and they would do a new production somewhere of Les Troyens. And I've seen many wonderful Didons. I worked with Tatiana Troyanos on that, and Susan Graham, many, many, many. And I always felt that your time would come. And when it did come, it didn't happen in New York. It happened, I believe, in Strasbourg. I'm not certain where. Yeah. And because I didn't get to follow that, and I would have come to France not only for the good French food, but to see all the performances of Les Troyens, because actually Berlioz was not acclaimed much in France at this time. And the first production was done in Karlsruhe in Germany, which is not that far from Strasbourg. So I
Mhm.
would have been very interested to stand in a city that's part French culture, part German culture, and experience this singular work with you in it. So talk about singing Didon.
Well, Fred, I don't know where to begin with that. We did it in concert and recorded that. And then, I don't know, a year or two later, I sang it in Vienna, staged in David McVicker's performance, and only one production. And I feel like most of my roles, I had the right amount of time with them, but except Didon, I would have, still loved another crack at her. Um, I was preparing her. It was back to back with Semiramide. And Semiramide was a huge learn, as is Didon. And I don't know, a
And you
year
sang
and a half.
Semidami, they not Arsace.
Semiramide, correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, and I was looking, sort of a year and a half out, as I was, okay, how am I going to organize this year? Because there were other things happening as well. And I went through the score of Didon, and I don't know how to describe this, but I knew it. I felt, even not singing through it, like I knew my voice would know what to do with it. And that, I wouldn't say that for all the roles. Many
Mhm.
roles I have to take the time to really put them in. I thought, oh no, like I already know where that goes. I can feel it. I have to spend the time on the French. That's going to be the key. So as I was preparing, rehearsing, and performing Semiramide, and the concerts and recordings started like a week after Semiramide closed.
Mhm.
The majority of my time, I was on with a French teacher, and we were speaking through the role in tempo with all the legato, staccato, with all the markings, the dynamics, the phrasing, all of it, and just speaking. And I've never prepared another role that way. And the minute I actually went to really sing it, it was all there. Now, 2 years before that, I was in Beirut. I was visiting my soon-to-be stepsons. They lived in Beirut at the time, and so funny. No, this was about a year. It was about a year before. My partner was like, "Oh, the boys are in school. I'm going to take you to a market in Tyre. We'll go to the market." It's like, "Oh, okay, great." And we're
Mm.
driving along in Lebanon, and I see the sign to Tyre, and I went, "Oh, weird that." And
Yeah.
I was standing. I mean, I should show you photos. I was standing among the fallen pillars, and there's the sign. Have you been?
No, no.
Oh, it's I don't I can't describe how powerful it was because it's literally on the corner of Lebanon. So here's all the main city of Tyre, and there's, electrical lines and falling and rubble and graffiti and buildings and chaos. And then here's the World Heritage Site that opens
Mm.
up onto the beach. And you see the leftover mosaics, and you see a couple still standing pillars. And then you see in the Mediterranean Sea fallen pillars, just that in the sea still, that they haven't moved.
Yeah.
And you see tombs, and you see the relics of the underground system. And it literally looks like the morning after, and it hasn't been touched.
Yeah.
And it was so moving and so powerful. And I thought, I don't know how many Didons have stood on this ground, It was
Mm.
so mystical to me. So already the minute I could smell the sea air, and I see the mosaics in my head, everything they had to leave behind. And I just felt from the first encounter with that role that I knew her.
Yeah.
And the beautiful part of working this with John Nelson, Michael Spires is the NA. He and John talked to me after I sang Ascanio with him
Hmm.
in the big French painter Benvenuto Cellini.
Right.
He said one day, "I think I want to do Didon with you." And I was like, "You're crazy." I probably the same thing I told you when you mentioned that. Crazy. But his approach to Berlioz was not to just make sound. It was so subtle and detailed and so full of color and lightness until the moment that you need to summon everything. And then just it
Yes.
was like the earth just opened. And so that was an extraordinary experience, and the chance to just be so completely absorbed with the orchestra and the voice, not worrying about staging, but just be purely in the music, which is
Hmm.
everything.
It
It
is.
was an extraordinary experience. And then a year later to do it with David McVicker, in a way, David and I knew each other quite well then, and he trusted me and I trusted him. And I'm loath to kind of say this, but I do think it's one of the great, great things that I did in my career. Especially in the staged version, it just, everything came together in
Is
such,
there a video?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, not that was an official video. Okay.
I've seen clip. I don't think so. I've seen clips. Sometimes a clip appears. You never know with these things. There probably
I
is.
have a big birthday next year.
Ah, okay. I'll see.
This
I'll see
year's
what
not
I
a
can do.
big birthday.
But
Anyway.
I'll never forget that in the big scene, in the sort of the mad scene, uh,
Yeah.
we were in the rehearsal room, and David sort of told me what he wanted, and I'd never done anything, but there's that right before she goes, "À moi, Dieu des enfers." I was on my knees, and I just slammed the floor and like, boom, and I was right in front of the table where David was directing, and he just went, and he kind of said, "People aren't ready for this." It was just the right time, the right role, the right circumstance with with John Nelson conducting, with David McVick directing later, and that was a gift. Yeah.
Well, I treasure the recording, and I do listen to that. I picture it, so because I never say favorite opera if on my very short list of favorite operas, but actually another one is Semiramide, as
Ooh,
it happens,
I
which is not everybody's favorite opera. It is really one of my favorite operas. And when I teach Rossini, because people undervalue him, I think, I would say we would not have had Aida if we didn't have Semiramide.
ah.
And I explain a lot of the connections, and people kind of get that. And then they understand Verdi differently because I believe both Wagner and Verdi are the musical children of Rossini more than any other composer.
Yeah, it's true.
And so for that reason, I can always find in Rossini, Italiano and Algeri becomes Nabucco in a strange way. It's the same
Ah,
thing. And all the seeds are there in Rossini that then Verdi and Wagner took in other directions beautifully, but I find it there first.
hmm.
Now, because I know we have a limited amount of time, I want to go to a different topic about Joyce DiDonato, which is to say, and I guess actually that discussion about Cenerentola was a good lead in. I didn't expect that. But there are many things where you are an activist, where you care about things in the world and connect them to music. And the other night I was watching a program here in New York. There was a documentary about the World Jazz Day that was done in Morocco last year, and they do it every April. So I guess it's coming up now. It came recently. I didn't see it. Um, and one musician said that the reason that music is so important is that music is like water. It gets to places that other things don't. And I love that idea.
Oh, that's such a good image.
Yeah, that water finds its way through and music finds its way through.
Oh, I love that image.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so did I. I was very taken with that. And so part of my admiration for you, you know this, it's not a secret, is that you use music as the water that finds its way to places that other things don't.
Hmm.
And rather than, and I have my political feelings that are very strong and my social feelings. There are people who talk about them as issues. You primarily use music to address them. And that's part of what I really love. And you began this, I think, as a teacher. And famously at Juilliard, and I was there at the commencement, you said in part, the truth is, you have signed up for a life of service by going into the arts. You are here to serve the words, the composer, the melody, the author, the chord progression, the choreographer, but above all, and most fundamentally, with every breath taken, step forged, and stroke of the keyboard, you are here to serve humanity. You are servants to the ear that needs quiet solace and the eye that needs the consolation of beauty, servants to the mind that needs desperate repose or pointed inquiry, to the heart that needs invitation to fight or silent understanding, and to the soul that needs safe landing or fearless, relentless enlightenment. And that holds for me 11 years later, I can tell you that. And I thank you
Um,
for saying that. And teaching is a big part of your life. Tell me about it.
I think connection is a big part of my life, because I know like the classes I do, I'm the masterclass teacher. I like any really great teacher that I've ever talked with, they're like, oh, I don't know, I'm just pointing the way, or I'm learning more than the kids. And what I find, there are technical things we can work on. There's specific things, of course, that you can teach to a certain extent. But most of what is happening when I'm working with musicians is unlocking things, taking away fear, taking away blockages. It might be something that's blocking the breath. It might be something that's blocking their creative. and expressive power. And that is, it's already in there. I'm not teaching it. It's about giving them permission to unlock it. And then they have to be the ones that say, okay, I'm going to jump. I'm going to take the leap. It's also the musicians that, and I don't know, I feel it very strongly. The ones who come and they're there to share, they're there to offer their music, they're there to connect to the audience. I respond much more profoundly, and it changes me when I experience a performance like that versus somebody who's showing me how good they are. And
Mm-hmm.
that can be thrilling. Sometimes I just want that, just dazzle me. And that's okay. That's fine. But I don't know. I don't know how you sing the incredible despair of Didon and not connect that to despair that you might have encountered in your own life. And then to see that despair in somebody's eyes. I'll see it sometimes at the stage door. People come and they don't really have words, but they need to be there just to kind of show up. And how can I, with any modicum of authenticity, dare to present that on the stage and then just walk away and not see it in somebody else's eyes?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is because music like water can find its way into places nothing else can, primarily the heart can then start to work and crack open. When we have that potential in our midst with
Mm-hmm.
music, I find it kind of negligent not to use it. And that's for me. I want to be really clear about that because not every musician or artist is pulled in this direction. Anybody who gets up on the stage and performs at a certain level has my respect. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's all that can happen. Or their perspective is they have to be in such a state here. They're not, everything else is tuned out, and this is everything. And they need to be in that space to give us a huge experience. So every musician is different. And I respect and honor that. But there are some that also are meant to do more with it. And I've never set out to do it or intended to do it. I just don't know how not to, to be honest.
I had the good fortune early to mid of my career and very late in her career to work a lot with Leontine Price and came to know her and gained her confidence. And we spoke about all kinds of things and the things that she told me privately I will never say. But one thing that I can tell you relating to what you were just talking about, anyone in America, but not only, who heard Leontine Price was ravished by the beauty of the voice, the artistry in addition to the beauty of the voice, the what I would call from my training, and I know you're training, stage deportment, which is something very, very important that a lot of people don't do. In other words, how you present on the stage, how you walk, how you stand, all of that. Um, she also knew that many people, especially but not only African Americans, many people saw her as an idol, an icon, a model of being among the first blacks to gain an international career, um, but so much more. And she said to me, I'm aware that for them, I represent possibility.
Hmm.
And the way that I do that, she said, is not by playing the role of the diva, but by encouraging them. And so within about 30 seconds of "Oh, Miss Price, I love you," well, thank you very much. She always said, "You are more than kind." And what's the line? And then she would say, "And tell me what you do."
Yeah.
And I remember one young man came after a performance of La Forza del Destino, and she said, "Well, tell me about you." She didn't even say "You're more than kind." And he said, my name is, he said his name. And she said, I know, and you're from Florida. You're from Northern Florida. Well, yes, ma'am. How did you know that? Well, I met you when you were 10 years old and you told me you wanted to be a doctor. What are you doing? Well, ma'am, I'm in medical school. And he was about 24. And she remembered him. Her memory was the best memory I've ever encountered in any singer by far. And because she understood that the way she gave back was not just, as she said, that the voice was a gift from God. She didn't do that,
Yeah.
but she had to be responsible for that and what it provoked in others.
Mhm.
So that invariably she made people walk away feeling not only that they met Leontine Price, but that Leontine Price listened to them.
Saw them, heard
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary because for many people, it would be enough just to be the diva.
Yeah.
And and again, I don't fault that because, I met her one time, but I wished I'd had the chance to know her obviously more. But just to be a Black woman, even today, as an opera singer, there's already so much more baggage to carry than, I of course can't understand it. I can observe it to a certain extent, but I don't know it. It's enough to just get up and sing well with all of that baggage, But for her to have this kind of mission and this sense of this is what I'm meant to do with the gift is an incredible thing. And
Yeah.
the generosity of that is breathtaking. It's
Yeah.
breathtaking.
I I could write a book just about what I
Please
learned
do.
from her.
Please do.
um, Another thing, it's like I have a list, but I really want to talk about these topics because there are aspects of you that I'm aware of, that some people are aware of, that I know that you do, and you're not necessarily asked about them. One of them is prison outreach. I should say that Clive Gillinson, who is the head of Carnegie Hall, who was on the show, I think in about the 10th week of the show 5 years ago, is a hero of mine because he understands how the arts connect to the larger world. And Carnegie Hall, glorious and gorgeous though it is a very open and welcoming place. And he makes it so, as does his whole staff. And so for that reason, you've done projects with Carnegie Hall specifically that I think are wonderful. And if you would talk about prison outreach.
Well, we need more time, Fred. We need more time. I have so many stories to tell.
Yeah.
It has been really one of the great gifts of my life is to have been a part of that. I found out maybe 10 years ago or so that they do this. It's in conjunction with Musica Cambia and their Wild Music Institute that does, go that takes the old phrase is how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. But now what Clive has done is he brings Carnegie Hall to you. He
Yeah.
brings it into the community. He brings it into a lot of places that most classical music won't reach. And it is staggering, staggering how they have changed lives and how they have sort of infiltrated into communities that it just that they won't get that's not what happens there. And I sat down and had an amazing conversation and heard about all these different things they do, and she goes, oh, and we're doing Sarah Johnson, who runs the Weil Institute, and we do prison outreach. And I said, well, I want to go. I don't think that response would have been immediate had I not been a part of Dead Man Walking. At that point, I had done, I think, 2 performances of it. And, Dead Man Walking, the true story of Sister Helen Prejean about a nun who goes and becomes a spiritual advisor to a man on death row. And you do not encounter that opera and remain the same.
No.
You are changed. And I said, well, I want to go. What do we do? And basically, this program teaches the men who are incarcerated there. It's a small group of people that have earned the right to be a part of it, maybe 25 people off and on. and they're learning composition and usually an instrument. And so they're writing music. And you go in, the first day is a workshop. You work on music that they've been writing. You interact. It's a pretty extraordinary thing. And then usually a week later, you come back and you give a concert for the general prison population. And when they heard that an opera singer was coming, it was the first time that had happened. They said, "Well, tell her to bring opera." And I walk in the first day, the workshop day, about 6 of them had written something for me to learn and perform with them, most of them duets. Um, um, the general atmosphere, I remember thinking, this feels like kind of like a community college, you know? I mean, it was Sing Sing, it's a maximum security prison. But in this education section, I was like, it feels like a community college. But there was one man that I thought if I was doing central casting for a scary prison movie, I'd probably pick him. And he, met he wouldn't make eye contact and was very isolated and kind of sat observing and, looked at the world like this. And his was the last piece that I worked on that day. And he'd given me one line. At that time, Carnegie Hall was doing a whole citywide festival based on West Side Story. So the theme for this was somewhere, and they could write about anything that they wanted that incorporated that theme as they interpreted it. So I got one stanza of music with just my part on it. I had no idea the context of anything. And it was like, somewhere far out there, but where's a place for us? It's somewhere. I still remember it. It was just that. So end of the day, everybody's getting tired. It's getting hot. We're kind of cramped in this small classroom. And all of a sudden, the last is with Joseph. And I was like, okay. And he wouldn't make eye contact. Nice to meet you. I said, okay, Joseph, so you just have to let me know when I come in because I have no idea. He goes, yeah, no. I'll bring you in. Don't worry. It's just important that it be soulful. Well, okay. So he starts singing and he's worked it out with there's a keyboard and drums and maybe guitar or something. And he's singing a song that he has written and it's very angry. And it's, they tell me I'm a free man, but I know because of the color of my skin, I'm not. And it was just very angry. And okay. Then there was a little bit of a chorus. And then he comes back to the second verse. And he says, two bullets is all it took to bring him down. And I caught eyes with Sarah Johnson at the doorway. And as it dawned on me what was happening in real time, I was like, he's talking about his crime.
Yeah.
And chorus comes, and there's a third verse. And the words were, what about all the times love, good old-fashioned love, looked me in the eyes, and I turned away.
Wow.
And he looks at me and he goes, now it's you. And I went, and the need to sing was probably never greater in my life. In this smelly, contracted, constricted. And afterwards, the song finished, and I just hugged him, which I think wasn't allowed, but I hugged him, and he hugged me back. And I said, Joseph, it's an honor to sing this with you. And he said, no, it's an honor for me to have you sing it. I said, no, really, the honor is mine. And then he made eye contact. And he said, maybe we should call it a shared honor then.
Wow. Goodness.
A week later, we go to the concert, and he introduces this in front of 200 men from the general population that are not a part of this program. And he said, I want to dedicate this song to the victims of my crime. And meanwhile, around that concert, we're talking, and a lot of the guys are saying, so, like, how did you get here? Like, and I talked to them about Dead Man Walking.
Yeah.
And explained about Sister Helen. Many of them had heard about her. They know the story. And I said, you know what? And Joseph said, Joyce, he goes, if you bring that opera here, we'll sing the chorus. And that was 10 years ago, 11 years ago.
Wow.
I came back about 10 months later Fred, Joseph was the first guy in the room. I don't know how to describe it other than to say it's like the light came on in his eyes. Miss Joyce, I've been waiting for you. I have so much to share. I was like, Joseph, I'm telling your story everywhere because it's amazing and whatever. And he said, before you came here, I didn't know opera existed. And now I know I have to write one. And he's written an opera. And there's more stories to tell about that. But
Yeah.
fast forward 10 years to last fall when we were opening the Met season with Dead Man Walking. I asked all the members of the Metropolitan Opera cast, every single one of them said yes.
Wow.
The Met coordinated with Carnegie Hall, which doesn't always happen.
No.
And we brought an abbreviated 90-minute version of Dead Man Walking into Sing Sing Prison.
Wow.
Jake Heggie came, the composer.
Yeah.
Sister Helen came and narrated. And we performed it. And 14 men from the program sang the chorus of guards
Wow.
in Sing Sing Prison. There's a great New York Times article that came out.
Yeah. I want listeners around the world to know, by the way, that Sing Sing Prison is not named that about music. It just happens to be the old name. There's a corollary project that I also love to the prison outreach is the Lullaby project, which I revel in that one. Talk
Yeah,
about it, please.
that's also the Wild Music Institute. It started as a very simple idea, and it has gone international. And they built this blueprint idea that is just extraordinary. And it started with the concept of teenage moms, teenage women who get pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
notoriously have a hard time bonding with their children.
Yeah.
And so they bring the mom in. Maybe she's had the baby, maybe she's pregnant, but it's early on in her motherhood. And they help her write a lullaby to her child. And she writes the lyrics, they help her with the music as much as needed, and then they record it. And this child grows up having their own lullaby. And it really has been shown to help bond, to help the mother really connect to her child, have the child this confidence of knowing somebody wrote something for me, is incredible. And then it's gone all around the world. It's found its way into a refugee camp in Greece that I've also done some work with. But there's a family of I don't need to tell all the details, but as awful a circumstance as you can even imagine, that two parents with 5 children, and in order to save some of the children, they had to leave 2 children behind.
Yeah.
I mean, as horrific as it could possibly get.
Yeah.
And the mother and father wrote a lullaby to the children that they had to leave behind. And it was performed in front of them, and the family, the two that, so it was her and then the 3 children that are here, holding each other. And I would never presume to understand at all the emotional, psychological, traumatic world that they're living in, but the courage and the power of them putting that into something musical, talking about music going places. It's medicinal.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that to sound simplistic. It
No.
is healing, deeply so. And we have all the science to show it. We have studies to show it, etc. Because it's something that connects heart to heart, which we all need. And so, Fred, I love the opera. I love recitals. I love everything. But when you witness how music really transforms lives and opens doors for people, and at a minimum reminds them of their humanity, many people are making terrible choices in their life because they've forgotten that they have humanity. They have something incredibly sacred about them. And once you've touched that and you've seen that in real time, it's hard not to incorporate that as often as possible into experiences and performances. Not that it always has to be, a big cause or anything. Sometimes also, like I say, we want to be dazzled, we want to laugh, we want to have fun. And I try now in my schedule, I try to balance those things and, do something that I feel quite strong about, and then come back and do. Last December, I had the greatest time doing a Christmas concert, my Christmas concert of my dreams, with a cappella group called King's Return. You should look them up. They're extraordinary. And I sang The Grinch, and we just had fun. And it was December, so it was
Yeah.
weeks after the election, and we were in Oklahoma, and we were in Texas, and we were in Kansas City, and we were in Ann Arbor. I mean, we were in the buckle of the Bible Belt, and it was very powerful to come and share that music and to smile and come together as a community and to live that together. So, I feel so grateful that I have the opportunity to curate these kinds of programs and put them out there.
Your description about the lullaby triggered a memory, and I can tell you the longer version sometime over good food. But the short version is that in the summer of 1992, I had the occasion to travel in the Norwegian Arctic and be with the Sami people and learn about their culture and go fishing with them and all of that and eat reindeer and the whole thing. And when you gain their trust, there are two things that the Sami will do for you. One is that they will give you a beautiful knife, because the idea is if they will hand you a knife, it means they trust you enough that you're not going to use the knife on them. But the
Yeah.
second is that they create something called a yoik, Joik. And a yoik is a song that has been personally created for you. And
Oh,
I have a little digital cassette now. We would record it differently. And it always stuck with me, this idea that if we created a song for everyone that was just theirs, that gives a sense of affirmation and inclusion and so on. And that's doable. And that's why the Lullaby Project particularly struck me, because it's the same kind of thing. It's like giving a yoik to a baby, to a child.
that's so beautiful.
And the second part of that experience was that I was in the farthest northern point in the Arctic in Norway, and there are communities there that were in World War II completely destroyed in fighting, because it was the route through which the Soviet Union, then allied with the Allies, would travel, and that the British would travel. And so the Germans were bombing, and everything was destroyed. And they rebuilt these communities as fishing communities and brought in people from Sri Lanka, which is the most unlikely site in the far Arctic, to see people who are fishers, fishermen and women, and people who knew how to clean fish and package it and so on. And I went to a church service on a Sunday, and there were Norwegians and Sami and Finns and a few Russians and Sri Lankans and so on. And what struck me was that every single person at that service could sight sing. And I realized that if we were to teach, this sounds idealistic, but I believe in it. If we were to teach every person in the world to read music, that's another thing that would give us community, because it's the language that we can have as the water, as we're now saying. That if I don't speak Sami or Swahili or Sanskrit or whatever, um, I I speak music. And
Mhm.
we don't have to be a musician to do that, but being able to read the notes and sing with someone else or sing alone, but understand that if, a piece of music is written in Korea and I pick it up, I can read it. Is
Not to get too woo-woo about it, but let's
yeah,
imagine a situation where you're in a room with five people, nobody speaks the same language, but you all pick up a piece of music and you're playing it. Your heart beats
yes.
align.
Yeah.
I mean, just physiologically,
Yeah,
literally, you start to go into harmony together and
yeah,
into balance. And that is, it's not complicated. You know that it's not complicated, but you start talking and da 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 da, and immediately you can be like that in 2 minutes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something else I want to work on. I have a lot of ideas. You and I could talk about all kinds of things. But you mentioned, and I'm mindful of your time. Um, I just want to talk briefly about El Sistema, Greece, and then I want to talk to you about Eden. And you mentioned it briefly, El Sistema, Greece, about refugees,
Yeah.
and El Sistema being of Venezuelan origin, a concept of music education, and much more. You're the patron of that.
In Greece, yeah. It's it was started by a colleague of mine from Asconnus Holt. He was working in the tour department. He traveled a lot with the Simon Bolivar Orchestra and knew a lot about it. And he was getting a little bit uh lost, I think, in that world. And he asked for a sabbatical. And Asconnus Holt gave it to him, and he went to Greece. And this was a big moment where all the refugees were coming in a lot. And he just said, I have to do something. And he started this program there in Greece for the refugee kids very intelligently, because it wasn't just for the kids in the camp, but from the outset, he integrated local Greek children as
Yeah.
well. Because he said at some point there has to be assimilation, there has to be on both sides.
Hmm.
And so I've had the El Sistema Choir sing with me a few times on stage. I've visited I took War and Peace there. So we did an amazing concert of War and Peace. Was it? I can't remember the venue where it was. It was in Athens. But then we went to the camp, and there was a Syrian artist that performed, and we performed a miniature version of it as well. We had kids dancing on the stage with us as Maxime was on his little electronic computer sounding like a harpsichord, his keyboard. And we shared music. And there was Syrian music. We were all dancing together in this camp, where there were people from Sierra Leone and Iran and Pakistan and everywhere. And the kids would come up with bags of chips saying, you want some, here, have this. Lots of hugging and connection. A lot of the parents staying in the background, quite a little bit despondent. It was a difficult place to be, maybe even more difficult than the prison, actually. I mean, there are different levels of prison in the United States, but
Yeah.
um, it was a deeply difficult place to be. And yet, bringing music there felt like one of the most purposeful things we could do.
Hmm.
Um, I've gotten to know a couple of the kids. There's one, well, he was a kid when I met him, and now he's a young man. And he and his family got put into Germany. They got, there's a word, assimilated or a transfer.
Yeah.
Anyway, and when he moved to Germany, he had an El Sistema orchestra there that he could join. He
Uh,
had a group where he could go, and not speaking German. He speaks Greek, he speaks Persian, he speaks English, but he didn't speak German. But he could integrate right away with his violin.
mm,
And he dreams of being a pilot, and now he speaks German great. And I know not everything is so simple and clear cut, but there are real examples and blueprints about how, especially with young kids who have really suffered great trauma, being in a group and singing or making music is such a powerful tool
mhm,
to bring them back into a place of stasis in a way, and to help them start to process trauma and let trauma move through them, and to feel a sense of community, to give them a skill, and not in music, of course, you're learning 100 different skills, but actually something tangible that if they move on, then they can take that with them and move through it. It is, it's one of those situations that on the one hand is very uplifting and on the other hand is devastating, because you think, there, what else can I do? You can never do enough. Will this problem ever be solved? What's the point? Where do we stop? I mean, it's a situation that doesn't feel like it has a solution. But my friend Anis, who started this, and he said, Joyce, the whole point is, even if you bring, because I will go there for a day and then I would leave and I would just be tormented about, like, but this is where I should stay here all the time and do the work here. He said, Joyce, you come and you bring joy and you bring an hour to their life that they didn't have before.
Yeah.
And oh, that one's hard. That's a hard situation, but I do go back when I can. They participated, and you mentioned Eden. I'll segue just a little bit to that. Eden wrapped up last fall, but we just a year ago we filmed a cinematic version of the concert Eden in ancient Olympia. It's part of the
Mm.
World Human Forum. And we brought together three choirs. We brought together a choir from Toulouse. We brought together kids from the National Opera in Athens, their youth choir, and kids from El Sistema Greece.
Mm.
The three of them sang together in this, we had about 30 kids in the choir. And my favorite memory of that, I'm so proud of the film and how it turned out, but my favorite memory was off camera. It was this beautiful hill in ancient Olympia. It's just the most beautiful surrounding. And the three groups of kids are singing for each other and dancing for each other in French, in Greek, and in whatever language, they're speaking. And they were sharing the music and they were laughing and they were learning and it was diplomacy. I mean, it was it was more than diplomacy. It was art. It was music.
Yeah.
And they were so alive and they were so connected and unified. And then they sang the the Olympic anthem in Greek, ancient Greek, French, and
Mm.
English. And it was a few days that were just really indescribable. And I don't think any of us involved in it will ever forget it.
Eden addresses, to to me at least, what is the biggest issue of all. There are many, many issues in the world, but this is the common denominator issue of our world and nature. I have a friend, I'm sort of his mentor, whatever, brilliant young man who his work is defending the rights of nature. In other words, that nature has a voice,
Oh,
and he's participating in
I
writing
thought it
the
was only
charter on that.
corporations that have a voice.
Pardon me, the corporations. And recently there were elections. He's not Ecuadorian; he's from Europe, but the recent Ecuador elections I was following, and I said to him, that Ecuador was the first country in the world to have the rights of nature in its constitution. He said it's still the only one, and
Wow.
we're trying to address that. And when he's explained to me what the rights of nature is, it's too long to address in even 10 hours. But the fact that because something is inanimate to us or doesn't speak to us, it's not an animal that barks or sings or whatever. It may be it may be a tree, a leaf, whatever, that there's a whole life going on in that tree and that leaf, and that's connected to the larger role, and we have to respect its rights.
And that sustains us.
Yes, it sustains us. Those trees and plants are what keep us going, and cleaning the air and providing medications and everything they do, and nutrition. Um, but so Eden, from your perspective, and I don't want to speak for you, is a musical expression of what that's about, covering, if I remember, 5 centuries of music.
4 centuries, but yeah,
Working.
it's you know, Fred, when it first started, it really started as a climate change project and feeling the strong need to like scream about it and using all the music that has been written over these centuries where nature is the muse and nature is the allegory and nature is home and um or nature challenges us, all this. And I started it originally started, I said, maybe I'll play Mother Nature. She's the ultimate diva, you know? And then I thought, well, okay, how do we sustain that? Like that it has to be theater at the same time. And as I struggled to really kind of find the way into it, it dawned on me, it's not about climate. I said, let me imagine that Eden becomes a huge movement, and for whatever reason, it succeeds, and we get the carbon numbers down, and people, we get rid of plastic, or, I thought I made up all these things. And I was like, we're still going to be left with that mental process that allowed us to get to this point. It's, in my view, it's that same disconnect about who we really are, that we are nature. We're not a separate thing from it. We are it. And we are also each other. So we can put people in a camp. What is that we go, yeah, that's a good idea. That's where they belong. Or how we can consume to the point where it's just destructive, and how we can look at one against the other. What is that disconnect? And so that is really where I ended up going with Eden, because I think if we can find that place that it's like, oh my God, I don't, you're not the enemy. And nature is like, she's on our side, and it behooves us to be on her side, and that sort of sense of connecting. And that's what Eden kind of turned into for me. That this struggle to kind of to realize that we have the capacity to be in Eden. It's not that we've just been kicked out. It's like we have the capacity to create it, to envision it, to build it. And I don't know about the whole world, but I know if we're each taking care of our little plot, our little circle. I mean, look what you're doing where you are. That's a kind of Eden in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, it may not be the kind of Eden that you would want to read about in a book or that you maybe thought of 10 years ago, but at the end of everything, that is Eden, what you're experiencing it. Not easy, but it's real, and it's about connection, and it's about love. And it's that simple.
I hear you. And as I conclude, I want to just bring up one more thing that a little more than 5 years ago now, the pandemic hit. And you had just done Agrippina at the Met, which was pretty wonderful for all kinds of reasons. And I would love to see that in repertory with the Coronation of Poppaea by Monteverdi. I think that would be a wonderful repertory company of that. And then I believe you were rehearsing Werther with Piotr Bechava. That didn't happen, but I remember that you and he and a person at the piano, I don't remember who, like
Howard
the day the
Watkins.
pandemic, who was that?
Howard Watkins.
Yes, Howard, of course.
And we got
Um,
Emmanuel Sesson on the harp.
that's right. You did sort of the first stream of music that I had seen in the pandemic as you and he and they um, gave us some of the Werther that we would not get here at the Met. But the Met on April 25th, 2020, produced this rather remarkable worldwide gala in which singers from all over the world um, performed, and that coincided with my first program, and it was an inspiration to me because I saw how Zoom could be used to bring in Peter Mattei in Sweden and someone else in California and wherever they were. Some people sitting at the keyboard playing their piano. Erin Morley played the piano
Yeah.
for herself, and we get back to Eden because what you did You had the Met Orchestra viola section that was pre-recorded from their individual homes. And it was dedicated to a man I knew, and I guess you knew him too, Vincent Leonti, who played the viola in the Met Orchestra and was among the first to die of COVID.
Yeah.
And the song that you sang from Handel's Circe was Ombra Mai Fu, which is about a tree
Yeah.
and how the tree offers shade, protection, comfort. Um, and the way you sang it, the way it was played in that particular experience, to me was a perfect microcosm of what I love about you. I'll put it that way. It was all there in that moment
Oh.
because you used art to communicate so much more, but without underlining it. You let the art speak
Hmm.
and you served the art and you served the audience and you served memory and you created memories in that because 5 years on, I remember it. I've never seen it again, but I remember it as if it were yesterday. It's 5 years ago.
Oh. Oh, Fred, that's so lovely.
So, Joyce Donato, I'm going to quote Leontine Price as we conclude. You are more than kind.
And what is it that you do? Tell me about yourself. Thank you, Fred. What a joy. And listen, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Fred. Happy birthday to you.
Joyce
Happy birthday.
Donato, thank you very, very much.
My pleasure.